At some point during a boat journey along the Kinabatangan River in the Malaysian state of Sabah, Borneo, you will round a bend in the river and see something in the trees that will stop you completely. It is a shape, large, rust-colored, moving through the canopy with a slow, deliberate weight that is unlike anything you have seen any animal do. It is looking at you the same way you are looking at it, with something that is almost recognition, something that is almost uncomfortable in how familiar it feels. It is an orangutan, a wild one, not in a zoo, not in a rehabilitation center, in its forest, on its river, in the oldest ecosystem in the world, going about its life with the particular unhurried authority of an animal that has been here for millions of years and has absolutely no reason to hurry. You will not take your eyes off it for as long as it stays in view, and when it disappears into the canopy and the river bends and the forest closes again behind it, you will sit back in your boat and understand something about wildness, about time, about what we stand to lose that no documentary has ever quite managed to convey. This is Sabah, and this is why you need to go before it is too late. Before we begin, subscribe to ensure that you never miss out on any of my videos. With that being said, let's get right in. Sabah is a Malaysian state on the northern tip of the island of Borneo. It is, by most ecological assessments, one of the most biodiverse places on Earth. Its rainforests contain species found nowhere else. Its rivers run through landscapes that have been evolving in relative isolation for so long that they have produced an extraordinary density of endemic life, life that exists only here, that cannot be found anywhere else on the planet. It is also one of the most overlooked destinations in all of Southeast Asian travel. Most visitors to Malaysia never leave the peninsula. Most visitors to Borneo go to Indonesian Kalimantan or to the Malaysian state of Sarawak. Sabah, despite containing some of the most extraordinary natural experiences available anywhere in Asia, remains, for the most of the world, a name they recognize without being able to place it on a map. This video is specifically about one species and one experience that Sabah offers that cannot be replicated anywhere in the world: the Bornean orangutan, and the specific, irreplaceable encounter of seeing one in the wild, in the forest it evolved in, living the life it has lived for millions of years entirely on its own terms. But it is also about everything surrounding that encounter: the forests that make it possible, the rivers that are the highways of those forests, the people who are fighting to protect what remains, and the honest conversation about what you as a visitor can actually do to help.
Part 1. The animal. What an orangutan actually is. Let's start with the animal itself, because most people have a partial picture of what an orangutan is, derived from documentaries and zoo visits, that does not fully convey the nature of what you are dealing with when you encounter one in the wild. Orangutans are the largest arboreal mammals on Earth, meaning they spend more of their lives in trees than any other mammal of comparable size. An adult male Bornean orangutan can weigh up to 100 kilograms. Despite that weight, they move through the forest canopy with a fluency and a confidence that seems to defy physics, swinging, climbing, reaching between trees with arms that can span over 2 meters, their grip on branches absolute. There are 2 species of orangutan: the Sumatran orangutan, which lives on the island of Sumatra in Indonesia, and the Bornean orangutan, which lives in Borneo, divided between Malaysian Sabah and Sarawak and Indonesian Kalimantan. Both are critically endangered. The Bornean orangutan is the more numerous of the two, with approximately 70,000 to 100,000 individuals remaining in the wild, and Sabah holds one of the most significant concentrations of them. Bornean orangutan males come in two forms, a biological phenomenon that is unusual among primates and fascinating to understand. Flanged males are the dominant form, large, with the distinctive cheek pads called flanges that frame their faces, capable of producing a long call that carries for kilometers through the forest and serves as both a challenge to other males and an advertisement to females. Unflanged males look almost like large females. They have not yet developed the flanges and the throat pouch that produces the long call, and they can remain in this form for years or even decades before transitioning to flanged status. The long call of a flanged male orangutan, a sound that begins as a series of low rumbles and builds into a resonant, carrying bellow that seems too large for any single animal to produce, is one of the most extraordinary sounds in the natural world. Hearing it in the Kinabatangan forest, carried on the early morning air, is a genuinely physical experience. It goes through you rather than simply reaching you. Orangutans are predominantly fruit eaters. Their diet is primarily the fruit of the forest, supplemented by leaves, bark, insects, and occasionally small animals. Their knowledge of the forest's fruiting calendar, which tree species fruit in which month, where the concentrations are, how to find food in the lean seasons between fruiting events, is encyclopedic and acquired over years of experience. An adult orangutan knows its home range the way a chef knows their kitchen. Every resource, every cycle, every location. Their intelligence is not incidental, it is the instrument of their survival. A forest this complex, this seasonal, this full of competing species, all trying to extract nutrition from the same resources, requires a brain that can plan, that can remember, that can solve novel problems. Orangutans have that brain. It is part of what makes them so compelling and so uncomfortable to watch. The recognition you feel when you meet their eyes is not sentimental anthropomorphism. It is the recognition of cognitive kinship. They are thinking. You can see it. Part 2. The Kinabatangan River. The place to see them. If you are going to Sabah to see wild orangutans, and you should, the Kinabatangan is where you go. The Kinabatangan is Sabah's longest river. It runs from the interior highlands of the state down through lowland forest to the Sulu Sea, and along its lower reaches it creates a floodplain corridor of extraordinary biological richness. The forest along the Kinabatangan, the riparian forest that lines both banks, is one of the highest density wildlife corridors in all of Borneo. And because the river provides easy access to the heart of that corridor, the wildlife encounters available here are among the most reliable and most spectacular available anywhere in Southeast Asia. The base for Kinabatangan wildlife exploration is the small town of Sukau, accessible by road from Kota Kinabalu, Sabah's capital, or from Sandakan to the west. From Sukau, wildlife lodges operate river cruises morning and evening along the Kinabatangan and its tributaries, low, quiet boats that move slowly through the forest-lined waterways as guides scan the canopy for movement. What you can encounter on a Kinabatangan river cruise is almost implausible in its density. Proboscis monkeys, the large, pot-bellied, bulbous-nosed primates endemic to Borneo, one of the most extraordinary-looking animals in the world, gather in the riverside trees at dusk in numbers that can reach dozens in a single sighting. Pygmy elephants, the smallest elephants in the world, calmer and gentler in their manner than their larger relatives, move through the riverbank forest in family groups. Estuary crocodiles surface in the river channels. Hornbills fly overhead with a wing beat you can hear before you see them. And orangutans, wild, unhurried, going about their own business, appear in the riverside trees with a frequency that makes the Kinabatangan genuinely one of the best places on Earth to see great apes in the wild.
The morning cruise is the best time. Leave before dawn. Be on the river as the mist lifts off the water and the light begins to filter through the canopy. The forest at this hour is at its most alive. The sounds, the movement, the quality of the light through the morning mist, and the wildlife encounters at dawn on the Kinabatangan are the kind that restructure your sense of what is possible in the natural world. Evening cruises offer different rewards. The proboscis monkeys move to the riverside trees to sleep. Pygmy elephants are often found wading or drinking at the river's edge in the cooler afternoon light. And occasionally, in the last minutes of light before the forest goes dark, you will see an orangutan building its night nest in the high canopy, bending branches and weaving them into a platform with the efficient expertise of an animal that has built hundreds of these in its lifetime and will build hundreds more. Part 3. Danum Valley, the deep forest. If the Kinabatangan gives you orangutans at close range and inaccessible conditions, Danum Valley gives you something harder to describe but equally powerful. The experience of being inside genuinely ancient, genuinely wild, genuinely primary rainforest and encountering orangutans within it. Danum Valley Conservation Area covers 440 square kilometers of primary lowland dipterocarp rainforest in the interior of Sabah that has never been logged, never been cleared, and never been significantly disturbed by human activity. The trees are enormous. Dipterocarps, the dominant tree family of Southeast Asian lowland forest, grow to 60 and 70 meters here, their straight trunks rising into a canopy so high and so closed that the forest floor exists in near perpetual green shadow. The sounds are constant and layered and include things you cannot identify. Access to Danum Valley is deliberately controlled. The Borneo Rainforest Lodge, the only accommodation inside the conservation area, sits on a bend of the Danum River, its chalets built on stilts over the water, its verandas looking directly into the primary forest canopy. This is not a luxury resort that happens to be near nature. It is a research and conservation facility that happens to also accommodate guests, and the experience of staying there reflects that priority. Guided walks, night drives, canopy walks, research briefings, all of it designed to maximize your understanding of what you were inside. Orangutan encounters in Danum Valley are less predictable than on the Kinabatangan. The forest is larger, the animals more widely dispersed, and the sightings require more patience and more walking. But when they happen in a context that the Kinabatangan cannot replicate. You are not on a river looking up at an animal in a riverside tree. You are inside the forest, at eye level in some cases. In the ecosystem the orangutan has evolved in over millions of years, with no riverbank between you and the oldest rainforest in the world. Danum Valley also offers the night drive, a journey along the forest roads in an open vehicle after dark, with a spotlight scanning the undergrowth. What the light reveals is a completely different cast of characters. Slow lorises, the world's only venomous primates, cling to branches with their enormous reflective eyes. Civets move through the lower canopy. Flying squirrels launch themselves from tree to tree in long, gliding arcs that the light catches for a fraction of a second. And occasionally, sleeping in the high canopy, the orange shape of an orangutan in its night nest, visible only as a silhouette against the slightly lighter sky above the forest roof. Part 4. The threat. What is happening to this forest? You cannot talk about Sabah's orangutans honestly without talking about what is threatening them. And the honest answer is complex, uncomfortable, and involves a global supply chain that most people in the world participate in without realizing it. The primary driver of orangutan habitat loss in Borneo, including in Sabah, has been the conversion of rainforest to oil palm plantations. Oil palm is in approximately half of all packaged products sold in supermarkets worldwide. It is in biscuits and margarine and cosmetics and detergents and chocolate and lipstick and bread. It is the most widely used vegetable oil in the world, and its production has expanded dramatically over the past 30 years precisely because its yield per hectare is higher than any alternative vegetable oil crop, making it economically compelling for farmers and investors in tropical regions where land is available. The land that is available in Borneo, the land that has been converted to oil palm, was in large part previously rainforest. The specific nature of the conversion varies. Some of it was primary forest, the clearing of which is now illegal under Malaysian law, but which historically occurred extensively and the effects of which are permanent. Some of it was secondary forest that had already been logged and which has lower biodiversity value than primary forest, but still higher value than monoculture plantation. And some conversion has been of genuinely degraded land with lower conservation value. The problem is not simply the conversion itself, it is the fragmentation. When a continuous block of rainforest is broken up into isolated patches by roads, settlements, and plantations, the wildlife populations within each patch become genetically and demographically isolated from each other. Small, isolated populations are vulnerable to inbreeding, to local disasters, to the loss of genetic diversity that maintains resilience. An orangutan in a forest patch surrounded by oil palm on all sides cannot disperse to find a mate in the next patch. It is effectively on an island. And islands in conservation biology have a known and predictable relationship with extinction. The Kinabatangan corridor is valuable precisely because it is a corridor, a connected strip of forest along the river that allows orangutans and other wildlife to move between the larger forest blocks on either side of the plantation landscape. The protection of this corridor has been a conservation priority for years, but the corridor is narrow in many places, and the pressures on the land alongside it are continuous. There is also the direct threat of human-wildlife conflict. As forest patches shrink and orangutans are forced to move through or along the edges of plantation land to find food, they occasionally enter the plantations themselves. Palm oil fruit is nutritious. Hungry orangutans are not unreasonable in eating it. But orangutans in plantations are sometimes killed by plantation workers or managers who view them as pests. The scale of this killing is difficult to document precisely, but it is real, and it is a significant source of orangutan mortality. None of this is a simple story with clear villains. The smallholder farmers who plant oil palm in Sabah are doing so because it is the most economically rational crop available to them. The companies that process and trade palm oil are meeting a genuine global demand. The consumers who buy products containing palm oil are doing so without knowing it in most cases. The chain of causation between a biscuit bought in a supermarket in London or Lagos and an orangutan killed in a Sabah plantation is real, but it is long and invisible and requires deliberate attention to trace. Part 5. The people fighting for what remains. The reason wild orangutans still exist in Sabah in numbers large enough to sustain viable populations is not good luck. It is the result of sustained, difficult, expensive, sometimes dangerous conservation work carried out by a community of people, researchers, rangers, local communities, NGOs, and government agencies who have spent years and careers fighting to protect what remains. The Kinabatangan Orangutan Conservation Project, established in the 1990s and now operating as Hutan, has been at the center of conservation work in the Kinabatangan corridor for decades. Their work has combined research, documenting population sizes, movement patterns, genetic diversity, habitat use, with direct intervention, tree planting to reconnect fragmented forest patches, community engagement with riverside villages, work with plantations on standards that reduce wildlife conflict. The Sabah Wildlife Department manages the state's protected areas and wildlife populations and has been responsible for the rescue and rehabilitation of orangutans injured or orphaned in human-wildlife conflict situations. The Sepilok Orangutan Rehabilitation Center, a facility near Sandakan that rehabilitates orphaned and injured orangutans and prepares them for release into the wild, has been operating since 1964 and is one of the oldest and most established orangutan conservation operations in the world.
It accepts visitors in the mornings, and watching a young orangutan learn to climb and forage at the outdoor rehabilitation platforms is one of the most moving experiences in Malaysian wildlife tourism. The wild lodges along the Kinabatangan, the Sukau Rainforest Lodge, Uncle Tan's, the various operators who run river cruises and accommodation in the corridor are also part of the conservation ecosystem. Tourism provides income for local communities that creates economic alternatives to plantation work and creates a constituency of people with a financial stake in the forest's survival. The ranger who guides your dawn cruise and can identify 20 species of bird by call is also the person who will report poaching, who knows the orangutan families in the area by sight, and whose income depends on the forest remaining intact enough to produce wildlife encounters worth paying to see. This is the honest case for wildlife tourism as a conservation tool, not that wealthy tourists visiting exotic places is inherently virtuous, but that the economic value of a living forest, measurable in lodge bookings, river cruise fees, wildlife guide wages, and the multiplier effects in the local economy can, in the right conditions, outweigh the economic value of converting that forest to plantation. Making the forest worth more standing than felled is the most durable conservation argument available. Tourism, properly channeled, makes that argument financially.
Part 6. What to do and how to do it. Sabah is accessible. That is the first thing to establish, because its remoteness is part of its reputation, and the reputation slightly overstates the difficulty of actually getting there. Kota Kinabalu, KK, is Sabah's capital and its main international gateway. It has direct flights from Kuala Lumpur, Singapore, and several other Asian hubs. The airport is modern, the city is pleasant, and from KK you can reach the Kinabatangan in approximately 4 to 5 hours by road, or in about 40 minutes by small aircraft to Sandakan, which is the closer gateway to the river. For the Kinabatangan experience, book a wildlife lodge in Sukau or the surrounding area. The Sukau Rainforest Lodge is the most established and the most conservation-committed operation in the corridor. It operates under a corporate social responsibility framework that directs a proportion of revenue to conservation work and employs local guides who are among the best wildlife interpreters in Southeast Asia. There are also smaller, more budget-oriented options for travelers who want the experience at a lower cost. Plan a minimum of 2 nights on the river. 3 nights is better. Give yourself enough time for multiple morning and evening cruises. The Kinabatangan rewards patience and repetition, and the encounter you will talk about for the rest of your life may come on the 3rd morning, not the 1st. For Danum Valley, book the Borneo Rainforest Lodge in advance. It has limited capacity, and the demand for serious wildlife travelers and researchers means it books out. A 2-night stay is the minimum to do it justice. 3 nights allows you to go deeper into the forest on foot and to do the night drive more than once. Sepalak Orangutan Rehabilitation Center is a half-day visit from Sandakan, easy to combine with a transfer to the Kinabatangan. The feeding platforms operate twice daily. The morning session at 10 is the main one. It is not the same as seeing a wild orangutan in the Kinabatangan, but for a visitor who wants to understand the conservation context, to see the orphaned animals, the rehabilitation process, the scale of the problem, Sepalak provides that context in a way that the purely wild experience does not. Bring good binoculars, bring waterproofs, wear muted colors, dark greens and browns, rather than bright colors that alert wildlife. Move quietly. Follow your guide's instructions without question, and bring a patience and an openness that allows you to sit with the possibility that what you encounter on the river may be something you cannot put on Instagram, but that will stay with you for the rest of your life. There is a version of the future in which wild orangutans no longer exist, in which the last individual of a species that has lived in Borneo's forests for millions of years dies in a fragment of habitat too small to sustain a viable population, and the species enters the list of things that were here and are no longer. That version of the future is not inevitable. It is a choice. A collective, distributed, mostly unconscious choice, made in the products we buy, the companies we invest, the governments we elect, the standards we hold or fail to hold the global supply chains that feed our consumption to. It is reversible.
It requires attention, and it requires the kind of sustained, organized pressure on the economic incentives that drive habitat loss, that individuals and communities and governments and corporations can collectively apply when they decide that something matters enough. Going to Sabah does not by itself change the trajectory, but it changes you, and changed people make different choices, and enough different choices over enough time add up to something that might be enough. Sabah is one of the great places left on Earth. The Kinabatangan at dawn, the Danum Valley at night, an orangutan in the canopy, living its ancient life in its ancient forest, looking at you the way you are looking at it. That experience is available now. It may not be available in the form it currently exists for much longer. Go. Spend your money with the people who are protecting what remains. Pay attention to what you see. Come back changed. If this video moved you, hit the like button, subscribe for more content about the places in Malaysia and Southeast Asia that matter and are running out of time, and drop a comment below. Have you been to Sabah? What did it do to you? Tell me. I read everything. See you in the next one.